Hey guys, it's Ben, and in this video I thought I'd give a quick overview of my method for the Rex Cube, also known as the Super Ivy Cube. I know some people have been asking me a little bit about this, and so I thought I'd go ahead and just make a quick overview video of the method and how it works. It's not going to be super in-depth, but it should hopefully be enough to get you started. So I'm going to go ahead and scramble here. I do have a scramble that I'm providing along with this video, so you can follow along with that. Assuming I scramble correctly. Hopefully I do. If not, oh well, I can just fix it in post. So alright, so here's the scramble. So my method effectively is a combination of both the reduction method, which is where you reduce it to an Ivy cube and then solve the Ivy cube, and the Rexisco method, which is basically my method for FTO applied to the Rex Cube, because as we know, this puzzle is a shape mod of the FTO. So it's a combination between those two methods, and it's basically tries to aim to be a little bit more efficient with the differences, the way the pieces work, and so forth. Alright, so the first step in my method is that I try to solve a corner, which is going to be 3 edges and 3 petals around that, so you get a whole corner, and it's equivalent to these first center on the FTO. So there's a few ways I like to do this. I usually like to build 2 edges and then put the triangle between them, so like this, and this can be done with basic block building techniques. Like let's say this wasn't here, you can usually kind of bring a petal next to the edge and you kind of get this pair, and you find the other edge that it goes with and you bring it up next to that. Now you do need to get the color scheme correct, just like with FTO. This is important. In my case, green's on the left, red's on the right for white, which means it's right. Now I am only white corner neutral, so I can solve any of the 4 white corners, but I don't go for yellow corners, although that's something that you can also do. You can go for any first corner, but I only go with white for myself for recognition. So once I have this done, this is effectively equivalent to the large trap, and then I build effectively the small trap, which is now going to be the other 2 petals and edge. So I first find the edge piece, and it's over here, so I kind of bring it up to where it would insert underneath the other 2. And now I need to get the 2 petals in. So I look around, I see that I have this green one, so I can bring this up here to match. And so now that this is done here, I'm then going to do U prime like this to put this in the back now. And now here's a red one, so I can rotate this down here and then bring it to the right like this. And then I can spin it in like that. So I usually do that. I basically like kind of orient the puzzle so that the large trap is over here. And then I can kind of build it on this top corner here. And anyways, putting that in then gets our first corner. So now from this point, I then solve 1 triple, which is going to be 2 petals and a centerpiece. And I always go for the white triple in this case, but you could be neutral and go for either one of the other 2, any of the 3 around the first corner. So that's another thing you can also think about. But in my case, I'm just going to do that. Now it's important that you use the right petals for this. You don't want to use the ones in the wrong orbit. So in my case, that's going to be these petals. So I'm going to turn this here and this here to match this pair up. And now the other one is here, so I'm going to move this into the right corner. And then go like that, let's say. Okay, so now I have this triple done, and then I'm going to insert it next to the first corner like that. And so that's 1 triple. Now I don't build a second one. This isn't quite Rexisco. This is where it starts to deviate. I've now just got 1 triple done, and I'm not going to bother with another one. And instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a second corner out from this already existing block. So I have a very large section of solve pieces here. So now I'm going to go for the next white corner that goes on the opposite side, which is going to use the rest of the white pieces. So let's see. Here's this triangle or petal here. And if I want to bring this up, let's see what I'm going to have to do. I'm going to do this. There we go. Now I have this pair. And then I'm going to bring it next to this edge. And it is important that you don't break up this triple here. I'm only doing moves on this top and on this, or on this top and on this front, that don't affect that triple, so this one's always preserved. Then I orient this large trap and go ahead and put this in. So now I have this block here. So then after that I move on to the small trap that goes with that second corner, and that's the remaining pieces. So that's going to be this edge, and then let's see. So here's this here. I'm going to match this up, and now I'm going to put this pair in. So I'm going to I think I just can do that. Yep, just bring this one in. And then finally bring that in next to that. So this is the first major part of the block build of the solve, and this is really where all of that is. And so now this corner is done, and the triple between them is all done. So that's basically the first 3 steps of the method effectively. So yeah, first corner, 1 triple, second corner on the other side. So now it's only these 2 layers of corners that have unsolved pieces at this point. Okay, so now from here I then am going to finish the last 2 corners. So this is similar to the last 2 centers on FTO. But this time I have the front layer free to turn and the top. So this is a little bit different from Ben Cisco, where you would only have the top layer and you have to do wide moves. On this you have the freedom to turn your front layer, which is really nice actually, and I think it's what kind of helps this method out a lot. So again, I usually go for a large trap first. And okay, so in this case I already see I have this pair, and this edge also belongs on this corner. And I can tell because this is red and this is blue. So this edge belongs here. So now I want to get the blue edge on the left hand side, and it's right here. So I can bring this down, turn it here, and bring it back. And now that works. And that's fine to do because I was bringing pieces from the other unsolved corner down to this corner. So then from here I'm going to move this to the left hand side, and now I just need to finish the small trap that goes with this corner. And so now from this point, this is where it deviates a little bit from FTO, because this is no longer this is now a super cube essentially with these centers, with these corners. So now it works a little bit differently. So let's see here. I'm going to get this blue onto this side of the edge with that. And now there's this case, which I'm going to solve like this. So putting this here, then going like that. Puts it in just like that. Brilliant. So now that I have this corner done, I am potentially going to have one more corner to solve, because again, since these petals are not the same color, they can change around. You can see that. So there are some algorithms for this part of the solution here. So there's 3 algs for this last center. So there's either the counterclockwise case, which is this one, the clockwise case, which is where they go the other direction, or you have 2 that are swapped. So for the counterclockwise case, you can actually use the corner algorithms from the CP algorithms from FTO for this. So the way that it works is that holding it like this with the corner in the back, if you have the counterclockwise case, then you do R, small r prime, R, L, R prime, small r, R, L prime, R. And there you go. That solves that. And if you have the other case, which would be this one where they have to go clockwise, then you can use the other CP algorithm, and it goes like this. It's going to be R prime, L, R prime, small r prime, R, L prime, R prime, small r, R prime. And there we go. That's going to solve it there. So the last situation that you might run into is you have 2 swapped petals in the last corner right here. So this case, it's kind of not a really great case, to be honest. There is an algorithm that's perfectly reliable that I like to use that works every time. And there's also a shorter algorithm that's a little bit nicer to execute that only works some of the time. So in this case right here, I'm swapping a triangle, or one of the petals on this last corner also matches a petal on the other center that we just completed. In this case, that's the yellow. So we can actually use the shortcut algorithm for this. So what we'll do is we'll hold it with the solved corner towards us and the unsolved one at the bottom right, like this. And the setup for this is if these 2 have to swap right here, you want to check what color that this one is. And in this case, it matches this side. So I don't know if it is easier to explain that or not, but basically this triangle, this petal here would go here, this one would go right here, and this one would go back up to here to preserve this one. So that means that for the setup for this, we're going to rotate here so that this this petal is in this position. This is the one that we're going to cycle with the other 2, and this is going to move to this position right here. So what we're going to do is, for this case, the algorithm is the following: R prime, L prime, R, small r, R prime, L, R, small r prime. And that solves this case here. And so this is a nice one because it means that it's just nicer to execute. It's a little bit better. But it is not center safe. So it will cycle around these three centers right here. And if your center from the first triple is involved within the setup move, then that's obviously not going to work super well. So there's another algorithm that you can also use. Okay, so let's say you have the situation where it's the two petals that do not share any colors with the other center we just did. This happens a third of the time, and it's not really the most ideal case, but there is another algorithm that we can use for this one. And this time we hold the unsolved corner right here towards us on the bottom with the first kind of layer, I guess, on top, so like this. So now you can look at these sides and you can see that these triangles on the sides here are going to match, so we're going to cycle with these ones instead. So for this algorithm, what we're going to do is, I prefer to do this right-handed, so we'll use the right corner. So we want to do a clockwise move like this, so an R move to set this up. So I guess it's better to hold it this way. So we want to do a B move to kind of set this up. So we're going to be doing this one to, this one to here, this one to here, and this one to here. So the algorithm goes like this. It is from this angle R wide, L, R prime, L prime, R wide prime, R, L, R, L prime, R prime. And there we go, that solves it. So from there, you just need to undo that first setup move, and we are finally done with the corner reduction, or solving all the corners. So that's pretty much all you need for that last corner, and that's the only one that's kind of tricky, but the rest of the other stuff is very similar to kind of FTO solving, and it shouldn't really be too bad. Okay, so now my method uses reduction for the remaining triples. So in this case, of course, we had the first one that is solved, and then we have the other 5 that we still need to solve. And so the reduction phase is really free form here. There's a lot of different ways that you can approach this, but the way I do it is I hold it with one of those corners one of the last 2 corners on top, and the other one kind of on this front side, but it's really kind of like on the right-hand side like this, I guess. So what I do from this point when I'm reducing the rest of the triples here, which are going to be these groups of 3 pieces, is I look for pairs. So I do see that I have this pair right here and this triangle. Actually, that's not quite ideal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for this orange. So I have this orange pair and this orange triangle, and I'm going to show that this setup that works really well for when you're forming the triples. So you want to set it up into a sort of situation like this, so that you have this pair, one pair on the bottom here, and then you have the remaining petal on top, in the other slot. So this triple slot here and this triple slot here are effectively your free slots, and you can put whatever triples you want in these positions by doing this kind of F move here. And then your U move can also bring other triples in down to the bottom, kind of like with 3 move inserts basically. So now I have this setup, this pair is here, and then here's the other petal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now do a D move, and that will match it up, which is what I want. And now from here, what I usually like to do is look at the other petal and see what color it is, and then try to find that center color on the top corner layer. And I don't see it here. I don't see any yellow, and in fact it's over in this position. So in that case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert the triangle instead. So I'm going to rotate to here and then do a 3 move insert like this to put this in. Then I'm going to bring it back. So now what that did for me is it made this other pair, and now here's the other triangle. So I'm going to do this move here to place this pair on the bottom. Now I'll insert this petal on the top side on the other free slot like this. Now I can do another D move and match these up, which is great. So now that I have the second one done, and now I'm going to look and I see that the other petal is red, and here's the red center. So now I can actually do that regular insert that I like to do. So I'm going to insert this red center into the back like this. Then I'm going to return the bottom layer with a D prime, and now that's here. And from this point, usually what I like to do is, essentially again, my goal is to take pairs and bring them to the bottom. And sometimes I like to get the petal with the other triangle that I need, the other petal that I need, into the slot above it so I can bring it down. But sometimes it'll go in the wrong orientation, which it happens in this case. This went in the wrong orientation. So I'm going to take it out and then insert it in the right orientation, which is done by resetting it here and then using the other layer to put it in, like this. So now this is here. Now I'm going to do a move here. And now, actually, this is a really nice case, so I'll show this that comes up sometimes, where you have 3 triples left, and they all have pairs. For this, there is a very easy 5-move solution for this. So you solve one of them like this. Then you insert the other pair into the bottom of that position. And then you bring it back. And there you go. It'll solve all of your triples. Now, there is another situation that can come up, and I will show that in a second. So here's another scenario you might run into where you only have 2 triples that are left here. And they both have pairs that are done, but you can't, interchange them. So this is where you need to use a flip. And for this, what you do want to do is make sure to set it up so that one pair is on the bottom and the other pair is actually on the top. So I'm going to do an F move here and then insert this onto this side. There we go. So now this one's pointing down, this one's pointing up, which is what you want. Now you want to do a bottom layer move that will match a pair on top. So in this case, that's not going to be this way because this doesn't match. So I'm going to move this center over here like this, and now it'll match. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this triple and this triple using the standard flip. So that's R, L prime, R prime, L. Then you rotate this way and do R prime, L, R, L prime. But you actually don't need to do the last L prime. You can actually skip it because this is just a top layer move effectively. So now you can just do the D prime, just go straight into that, and then that will solve that case, as you can see. One more case that might happen is the centers are effectively swapped. And for this, it's basically the previous case, but you do it twice. So I'm going to turn here, flip these. And you can also cancel by continuing that move on the bottom layer to make the other pair. And now I'm going to flip this one. And then bring it back one more time. And then finally that will solve that case. Okay, so the point of doing all of that is you now have effectively a 2-gen Ivy cube. So you had your giant block that's done, and now that these 2 corners and the remaining triples are paired up, you now have just 2 moves on your Ivy cube now. So these moves here, basically, is what you're dealing with. So now you can solve it as a 2-gen Ivy cube, which is very, very easy and quick to solve. And usually what I like to do is solve both the corners and then get the rest of the triples into place. So, okay, well that was kind of an easy scramble. Let me see if I can find another example. Okay, so here's something a little bit more interesting. So for this one, sometimes what I also like to do is just see if I can get one triple on this top side to match with one of these corners. And in this case, I can do that. I can bring this up to match this orange on this side. And now I'm looking at the other corner color, which is yellow, which actually isn't ideal, but what I can do is say blue. Yes, so I can bring this out of the way, then bring up the blue one, and then match it down with the other one that I just did. So I have 2 that are next to each other that are done. The corners can be in any orientation at this point. The corners could be anywhere. And then I have the last 3 that need to cycle around. So then I can just, and that's that solution for this case, but there's some other ones. Here's another example. So finishing this and this, like I said, but this time the corners are not oriented. And in fact, they face the same way like this. So this is a 6-move solution, and it doesn't matter which direction you do this, whether you do the right move or the left move first. I just do R prime L, R, L prime, R prime L. And that will solve that one. And there's some very similar cases like that. Now, there's another one that comes up sometimes that I want to point out, which is this one, where 3 triples are cycled around a corner. So do not do the 8-move solution, which is this one. That is very bad. Instead, what you want to do is move 1 down. So you have these 3 now that cycle, then rotate this way and swap them around, and then undo that setup move. So that's a 5-move solution for that case, which is much better. So that's something to keep in mind. And really, you don't have to follow my advice on the 2-gen Ivy cube stage of the solve. You can really do it however you want. I'm just trying to illustrate kind of how I approach and how I like to do it. So there you go. Okay, so now a really quick discussion on why I like this method and why I think it has some good advantages, although it could have some disadvantages, and I can go into that. So the reduction to the 2-gen Ivy cube works pretty nicely on the Rex cube puzzle, and so you might think, well, why don't we do that on FTO? And the reason why is because you actually cannot do that on an FTO, because the triples have orientation on an FTO. So the triples could say be like, say, this orientation. I don't know, something like this. If we try to do the 2-gen, quote-unquote 2-gen Ivy cube to solve this, we will run into a problem. And that is that some of the triples will end up flipped upside down. And so we have to use extra sequences to solve that at the end, and it's not very move efficient. However, on Rex Cube, triples do not have orientation, which means we don't need to worry about it at all. It's just more efficient. You don't have to worry about the orientation of triples. You can still just use the 2-gen moves to solve it, and it doesn't matter. So that's why it's quite nice. The other reason why I like this method is that it overall has pretty good look ahead and recognition. If you try to do straight reduction, which is trying to do all 6 triples, it's kind of hard to look for and find pieces. And if you even, slip up once and try to, find something, and it turns out that you can't find anything to match up with a center or a pair that you already have, then it's really not very fast, and recognition kind of sucks on it. But with this, when you have one triple solved, you're not looking at as many sides on the puzzle, and so it's a little bit easier to find your pieces because you really only have to check the top and the front, which is definitely not as bad as having to look all the way around. So in terms of ease of recognition, this method works a little bit better than the straight reduction method. And it still gives just about as much freedom, pretty much. I mean, you may do like 1 or 2 extra moves when you're trying to finish your second corner, but it's really not significant in the grand scheme of things. One thing I think is that this method is maybe not quite as efficient as the full Rex Cisco method. I feel like with certain techniques on Rex Cisco that, just make everything a little bit more streamlined, it could potentially be a better method than this one, but for me, I think I like this one a little bit better because there's not as many wide moves that you have to do, and you have a little bit more freedom with how you build your corners. And there's just more algorithms that you can use that are safe on your pieces. Most of the time you can use that nice algorithm for the 2 swap, for example. It's only in that 1/3 of the time scenario that you kind of have to use a different alg for that case, but most of the time it's really nice, which I quite like. So that's it. That is pretty much my Rex Cube method. If you have any questions, let me know. Happy to answer them, but hopefully this makes sense to everybody. And that's it.